Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights. Here with Rich Klein. We're going to talk about the 88, 89, 90 Topps big sets. Some of you may be saying, what's that? But we're going to address it. And thanks sponsors, Topps, Panini, and Upper Deck, Heritage Auctions, Huggins & Scott Auctions, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Burbank Sports Cards, ComC.com, Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication. So all of a sudden, we're minding our own business. Topps has competitors. In 1987 and 88, someone at Topps had the great idea to create a Topps big set, which was breaking the mold of the 2.5 by 3.5 and doing kind of a 56 Topps size and 55, 56 Topps format of horizontal cards, slightly bigger side, probably 2 5/8 by 3 and
yeah, it's the size of 55, 56.
Yeah. So I don't know if somebody got a bonus for that or was fired over that or got a raise over that, but I don't know that I call it a bold step, but it was an interesting step. And frankly, I didn't get it. We were in the unenviable position. You weren't there yet, but we were. Is this a set that ought to go in the monthly price guide? Is it a mainstream set? It's in packs. It got reasonably widespread distribution.
Well, the first,
where were you at that?
I was at Mike Gordon's store. I think I was about to get there. And I will tell you, the first of the 3 series of 88 Topps was very hot. They produced a lot, but it was very popular. It's only 88 cards. It's not hard to complete 2 or 3 sets from a box, which means that also once you open a box, you don't need to open it. Yeah. You're done. Yeah. Except that, as we discovered nowadays, 88 Topps has variations on the back with the letters.
Yeah, the sheet, it's probably designating the sheet. Yeah.
And there were 4 sheets, A, B, C, and D. And we discovered that, and I think that's the only year they did that. And before the pandemic, I was doing a slow, every 5 cards a day, adding to the ComC database, breaking those up.
By checking the backs.
By checking the backs.
Yeah.
And so I was making good progress. Like everything else, when we got slammed, got deferred.
I really appreciate your diligence, but I'm wondering, I collected color variations and back variations and photo variations. I was an exhaustive collector, but I don't know that I would have collected these very minute differences for 88 Topps big. So are you perceiving that some are tougher than others, or that in ComC people are trying to get all the different versions of the Don Mattingly or whoever it is?
I always act this way whenever I do a variation. Would a super collector want it? And there are certain things that I just shake my head and say, I'll do it if I absolutely have to. I actually like that one. That was interesting. The 91 Donruss variations with the stripes or the design on the sides, that I try to avoid, frankly, unless somebody sends a request. And okay, we're getting to the point where I'll probably, when I get to pick up stuff again, we'll hit that because it's more than half the set's done.
Are those just factory sets?
I think so.
Or pack pulled?
I think so.
Yeah.
And I think there are other variations in 90 as well like that, but they're not as distinct. 90 is more subtle. And so I don't have a problem with that, where I just look at it. If I'm a Don Mattingly collector, if I'm a super collector, I want both varieties. Or sometimes even 3 varieties of certain players, because some of them you can't read which sheet it came from. Some of them there's actually 3 varieties in 88 Topps.
Okay. So basically what you're saying is that perhaps the first series of 88 Topps big was successful in the eyes of Topps.
Yes.
And if they really have a year lead time, then they're thinking, hey, great, we're going to have 89 Topps big. And so let's get that in the works and get all that lined up. Okay, that may be an excuse for why 89 Topps big, but why 90 Topps big? Because it seemed like it had played out. It wasn't, or were they selling more than we think?
They may have been selling more than we think, but I never see them anywhere, which is what's interesting.
They go to kids. Were they like a kids?
But I don't remember, I've handled, I don't want to say perhaps more donations than anybody else and more of those cards, but I've probably handled 5 million donated cards or something like that.
And there ought to be a lot of those.
And there really isn't.
Not as many compared to the Topps.
No.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is I wonder, because 89 Topps, remember, did Bowman in the large size.
Right.
I wonder if they thought the large size was such a success, let's do it again. It also makes you wonder whether Cy Berger said, this is a return to my roots of my first days with the company with the oversized cards. So I want to do it.
Or Cy Berger was marginalized and they had some new person that said, hey, let's try that. I don't know. Okay, here's my little bombshell for you that I just was thinking about, because, again, we don't script these, but so I'm at Topps. I'm going to turn back the clock. It's 1988, early in the year, and I'm Cy Berger. They come to me with these designs for 88 Topps big, and I say, you know what? Here's what we need to do. We need to not call it 1988 Topps big. We need to call it 1988 Bowman.
That would have been...
Would that be interesting?
That would have been fascinating.
Again, larger size, just like 89 Bowman eventually was. But the dilemma that we had in the price guide of not listing it because it was a less than full-size set and it was like an extra set. So we wouldn't have, but if they'd have called it 88 Bowman, would we not have had a dilemma?
A big dilemma.
Because in 89, it comes out, again, slightly larger size. So I'm wondering, why didn't they call 88 Topps Big? And maybe they had an 89 Bowman on the drawing board, that they wanted to go with more of a pure card there, and the 88 Topps Big was, again, reminiscent of the 55s and 56s.
If you remember, 89 Bowman has people like Johnny Art in it, Austin Manahan.
It was prospect centered.
It was a prospect centered set. There were a lot of veterans too, and a lot of active players and a lot of stars. But there were a lot of prospects, and it's the first prospect set.
And rookie card oriented in that sense, whereas the big sets were the opposite of that.
Correct.
It was almost all veterans.
But 264 is 11 players per team, so you are getting almost all the good players. I'm sure there's somebody missing. Yeah, I'm sure there's somebody missing. But for the most part, you're getting an average of 11 players on each team, or 10 players on each team. So 10 players on each team, that's 40% of a roster. You ought
to be able to get all the good guys.
Yeah.
Or the perceived good guys.
Yes.
Yeah. I just was thinking that Bowman still had a name in 88. If they'd called it 88 Bowman, it would have gotten a different level of attention, but it wouldn't have been appropriate to make it look like the 56 Topps. It'd be better to make it look like 56 Bowman with a TV motif or something.
I wonder, would it have been more successful instead of trying it in series, whether if they had done all 264 cards at once instead of 3 series? You wouldn't get 2 sets out of a box or a guaranteed set out of a box, but you would have had to buy several boxes just to get the set.
Were they still gum included in that?
No, there was no gum in 88.
So there's no gum. Yeah. So I was just thinking, if there's gum, that kind of makes it more of a kid product.
Maybe they were trying to appeal to the older audience by doing the cartoons on the back too. The cartoons on the back are very 50s and 60s oriented. So maybe they were trying to attract the older audience.
Nostalgic. I didn't understand, other than those were the days when these card companies were trying to differentiate, Topps being the incumbent. If they threw something out there, a bunch of people would buy it just because it's Topps something. But it seems like it couldn't have been that successful, and yet they did 3 years worth of it.
But there were other sets from the 80s that were oversized too. They did Topps Supers for 2 or 3 years, like 84 and 85. Yeah. They did these Topps Tattoos. They did certain sets where one was probably sufficient. They did them for 2 or 3 years, and you shake your head and you're saying, you did it once. It's not going to do real well. Did you really make money with it? Or are you just making so much money off the base set that you can afford to really throw darts at the wall and hope something else sticks?
If something is not a winner the first year, the only way it's going to be a winner the second year is if you dramatically improve the design or dramatically decrease the production.
Or the third way. The 96, 97 Topps Chrome basketball. Only distributed in retail, and all of a sudden it exploded. It's got a Kobe rookie now. We don't even know how many thousands it is, but I could imagine a high-graded card, maybe even high 4, if not 5 figures. Yet the dealers all rejected it, so it went to retail, and the next year it became a much more popularly accepted product because all of a sudden the dealers bought it.
Then it was off to the races, but then
it was off to the races.
Retail quantities, even if we were to know, this brings up an issue, even if we were to know the exact production figures of the Topps Bigs or the Topps Chrome basketball, even if we knew exactly how many cards were printed, a million retail packs is different than a million hobby packs in terms of where they are now and how they've filtered through the system.
Well, what I learned from doing the almanac is things that were retail only, like some of these, we'll call it 23K gold cards or whatever. Those cards that were retail only, amazingly, they pretty much hold their value.
They've held their value even though the production quantities were probably 25,000 of each one of them.
Yes.
And distributed to people that should have put them away.
Right.
But either they're buried or they...
And nobody knows what they were because you have to go look it up in an online price guide like Beckett, or you have to look it up in a ComC or an almanac, and it's hard to do. Topps Big at least is easily identifiable, but I agree with you. In those days, Sportsflix ran for 5 years. 86 was a huge success. But frankly, after 87, you probably could have just kiboshed the whole thing, especially once Score came out in 88. We don't need to do this anymore. We got Score. They went through 1990, and then they brought it back in 94.
In business, the line extension, when it's contributing to your overhead It doesn't even have to make money. It's just keeping people busy through the year. So I can see why Topps Big would do that, but it just seems 3 years. And yet you're agreeing that if it was, because most people are always asking, they're probably asking you, they're asking me, what's the next hot thing? The next hot thing could be something that's been overlooked. Topps Bigs have been overlooked, but why is that? It's been overlooked because they're just not considered that collectible, that attractive. Could that change? Maybe. But if you're saying that in all these donated millions of cards, you rarely are seeing Topps Bigs, I don't think that means people are holding on to them. I just think they're, relatively speaking, there's a lot less Topps Bigs in 88, 89, 90 than there are the base brand flagship.
Especially
by
10%,
would you say?
Especially 89 and 90.
Would you say 10%?
I'd say maybe 25%.
No, 25 to 1 or 25%?
25 to 1.
Yeah, I think there's 10 to 1 at least.
Yes.
And if you do that, then you do the math and you think, well, okay, if there's 10 times as many Don Mattingleys, then why shouldn't that Don Mattingly be at least more expensive than the other one? And it's because demand's not there. And they don't fit in the regular plastic
There are very
sheets.
few, exactly. There are very few rookie cards. But here's the other thing. They are beautiful cards. And if you look at them aesthetically, a lot of them are really pretty cards. And on that level, they could be more popular.
My cards that I had were not better looking because they had dinged corners because they just didn't fit in the boxes. They got knocked around. And so you can't get them graded. They didn't fit. And again, who's making that decision? I don't know. Again, like we said with 89 Bowman, it's probably worth a try. If you're going to go against tradition, you better have a good reason.
And I don't think they had a good reason. But then again, as I said, if you look at the 80 Topps weird sets, there were a lot of things you would just shake your head at today.
Especially the really big super card. That's just not.
And heads up about the same time. That's another really tough card, but probably very few people looking for them.
Yet, could that ever come into vogue?
Absolutely.
It could. And demand, it doesn't take much demand to move the needle when supply is less.
Absolutely.
Which of the sets is your favorite?
I really
or
don't
do you think is the best bet?
I think the best bet is probably 90. I bet you there's not a lot of 90s out there. And if I was going to make a quote investment in unopened or complete sets, I would do the 90.
That's probably the way to go, is to get unopened or complete sets that were made and put away then. Because if you get loose cards, good luck.
As big as they were, as you said, they got dinged up.
Good luck. Okay, well, thanks, Rich. I think thank you, Topps, for
we thank you, Topps,
for trying, and every little bit helps. We were there back in the day, and we thought, what are you doing, Topps? But they don't always know which one's going to hit big. That one didn't, but they had some other things that did great. Yeah, thanks, Rich. Thanks, listeners. Be back again tomorrow with another episode.